Welcome back to Notes from the Crucible. This time we're going to be talking about something we all do exceptionally well. In fact, I'm not even sure why Sandy decided to put this in his book. We're going to be talking about listening and then not listening.
Yes, raise your hand if you're an expert listener, have nothing to learn in that area. Yeah, this is so important for leaders because we take it for granted. And we tend to overvalue the other side of communication in our leaders. That is, their capacity to speak, to spin a tale, to weave a web, hail fellow well met, all that sort of thing. That kind of gregarious or even charismatic communication is impressive, but it's nowhere near as powerful as the power of listening. And listening needs to be cultivated. So I want to say to you as young leaders that the most important skill, capacity, faculty for you to develop for your long haul is the capacity to listen. And there are ways to do that. The best thing about listening is it improves your capacity to know reality, how other people experience, how you experience it. This is what you do as a leader, is help people understand the real scene, what's really happening here. And if you're out of touch, you become a joke. It's so important to listen well. It also causes your people to be included. To be seen and heard is a really powerful affirmation. And people respond to that, and they're willing to invest more where they feel, I'm a real boy. I'm here. Right. I'm seen. I'm heard. And lastly, the core of listening isn't just techniques, which we touch on in the book. There's a whole list of them. They can be learned. But what can't be learned is that listening, real listening, requires a humility of character to believe that the other person has something you might need to hear, even if it's somebody you don't agree with very often, even if it's somebody who's very distasteful, even if it's somebody who's your opponent. Listening is important. And here's the most important thing about listening. That kind of humility has to be cultivated by listening. Listening is the practice that brings humility.
Wow.
So listening is hugely important. And I hope as you read the book, you'll be thinking about what kind of listener you are, how you can cultivate not just your own skills as listening, but the culture of listening in your organization. We'll get to that in the questions in a minute. The flip side of that is not listening. There are times when you don't listen, when the noise coming at you is so negative, so caustic, so abrupt and ungrounded that you can't be thrown off your course by it. You have to be careful about that. In the book, I use a metaphor of art, that if leadership is an art, then artists have something to teach us, and that is their own voice matters. To have all the technique in the world to be a great leader, but have no art, that is nothing to say, no personal investment, no unique take, that's not really art at all. So there's a part of the work where you have to be careful sometimes not to listen. You may, for example, have at some point in your life either experienced or witnessed someone, it may be a young professional, who had a brilliant new idea and they were enthusiastic about it and they brought it up in a meeting, only to be slapped down by one of the old pros. And not only were they humiliated and wounded by it, but they learned not to bring their best ideas out. There's times not to listen too. So the book explores those kinds of conditions and offers you a chance to think about that in your own work.
So what are some questions that our audience can kind of consider as they try to work through these things? And are there any practical ways that they can actually do this when they're together?
Yes. So again, there is a list of techniques. I mean, I took a course in listening years and years ago. I don't know that they even teach them anymore. It's very, very 80s. But there are techniques that you can master that really have to do with managing yourself and your attention, eye contact, body posture, listening all the way through, asking clarifying questions, but most importantly, being quiet, especially until the other person has said what they have to say. And while they're saying it, don't be thinking about how you're going to argue with it. Try to get into their argument. That is, try to get into their logic and understand it. So these are techniques, but again, it's character as much as it is technique. With regard to your organization, I would say, are the ways that you routinely communicate in your organization centered on careful listening, or are they just broadcasting noise? When you meet as teams, is that time rich, engaging, and useful, or are you checking boxes in meetings? Is the agenda what you're getting through, or are you having real conversation? Are the right questions being asked? What are the courageous conversations you need to be having in your organization that everyone's avoiding? And as a leader, how are you bringing those courageous conversations, curating them back into the center of the organization? These are things you can do around listening, around not listening as an organization. You need to ask questions like, I wonder if anybody has a really different view on this. I'd like to hear it. I wonder if there's a better way to do this. What are we not noticing in the environment that we ought to pay attention to? Who are the novices who can give us a fresh look at this? There are just a whole series of questions like that you can begin to ask yourself. In your organization, it's both about you personally, but also about the team you lead, the culture you create in your organization, your habits of communication within the organization.